Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Munoz, CEO of experience agency D-Flash. Each week, I bring another business leader who's doing some game-changing work, and this episode is no different. I'm super psyched to have Kathryn Fantauzzi, who is the CEO and co-founder of Apollo Neuro. It's a fascinating company, and I'm sure she's got an incredible story. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Kathryn.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So psyched to have you on the show. So we start the show off the same way every single time, and the answers are always rather interesting and hilarious. Sure, yours will be no different. So, Kathryn, what was your first job?
My very first job?
It can be anyone. It can be your very, very first job in like high school or in junior high or at college, whatever kind of pops into your head first.
Oh, sure. So my very first job, which was back when I think minimum wage was about $5, and I thought it was a whole heck of a lot of money, was when I was about 15 years old, and I worked for my school district. Essentially new technology was coming into the school. The teachers didn't know how to use it. It was before, it was back when people were using overheads. Before they moved to using, presentations and having the internet, and the teachers were having a hard time. Yeah, and the computer science teacher and the tech guys were not so good at teaching the teachers about how to use the technology, and so I got hired essentially to be a nerd translator to help translate. Somebody talking about how to do it in a technical sense to how to do it for somebody that had never used it before. And I've been carrying those skills with me pretty much since.
See, every single person, every time I ask this question, the skills, the things they learn from their first job always correlate to what they do now. It's as if there is some cosmic karma with it. How old were you?
15.
Of course. But you knew you could talk to different constituencies and help them figure out the technology.
Yeah, I mean, mostly the skill was just understanding where somebody was coming from and then relating how this thing would help them and how to use it in the way that they actually needed to use it. Keep it simple.
Exactly. People don't understand how important keeping it simple is so very important. Not that hard, it really isn't, but just keep it simple. So awesome. So how do you go from helping folks with the overhead projector and transparencies to the today? Like, what's that journey been?
Well, it's been a long one, but I guess throughout my career, I have, in general, been someone that helps translate technical concepts, whether that be new technology or financial systems or whatever it may be, into digestible concepts that can be easily translated. So my first bigger gig that paid me more than $5 was during my graduate work. I took a position at the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, which is a pretty cool gig. I actually got to work on a $20 million incubator fund, which was established to help sustainability technologies that were out of R&D actually accelerate basically adoption in the market. So figuring out new tech in buildings, and then also working on a revolving loan fund to help small businesses invest in sustainability projects for their buildings. Because energy bills can be a pretty big deal for small businesses. And so I worked on, that was called Green Jobs, Green New York. And so in both those instances, it was a job that required a lot of communication between people in the industry, people in universities, researchers and engineers with constituents, and figuring out how do we help identify companies that are going to make it, and how do we help them accelerate the commercialization and meet who their customers will be, and how to basically get their technology out there and get it adopted. And I think a major motivating factor for me in all the projects I've ever worked on is that there are generally these great technical solutions, and often there are these very brilliant people who come up with, innovations in healthcare, innovations in technology, but then they don't necessarily remember or have had to develop the skill of understanding who's going to use this.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how are they going to use it? And then how do we tell them what about this matters for them? A lot of people get wrapped up in a spec sheet and the details and the great engineering concept they've come up with, and then are very upset to find out that nobody cares. And so what you really have to do—
what does this do for me right this very second in 2 sentences? I don't care about how many different theories you got to get this algorithm to work. Well, how does it help me right this very
Right. What have you done for me lately? And so I have spent a long time in my career helping technical people tell a story of explaining how their invention, creation, discovery is really going to make a meaningful impact. And so I try to partner with people who are going to create these creative solutions to make a meaningful impact, and then bring them to the market, because the benefits to the customers are either in their day-to-day lives with their health or with a new tool that makes their lives easier.
Awesome. And so what is it you do now?
So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Apollo Nueroscience. So Apollo is a technology that uses, so it's a wearable. You can either wear it on your wrist or your ankle, and it's controlled by an app. The app basically has moods programmed, and it works kind of like a body playlist. Essentially, you pick a mood, like I want to feel energetic, or I want to feel focused, or I want to socialize, I want to fall asleep, relax at the end of the day. And you pick a program, and then essentially this wearable begins to vibrate. And it doesn't vibrate like anything you've felt before. It doesn't feel like a vibration from a massager. It doesn't feel like your cell phone. It feels like an ocean wave that's very gentle on your wrist or your ankle. And the way that it works is it essentially helps your body recover from stress, like meditation does, or like yoga does, or like deep breathing does, but you can use it whenever you need it. And so this technology was originally developed at the University of Pittsburgh. My husband, now co-founder, is a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist, and he was working on, and he helps people essentially. He specializes in addiction and treatment-resistant conditions like PTSD. Works with a lot of veterans with PTSD and people who have, troubles with depression or anxiety. And what he realized is that mindfulness techniques worked really well. So like deep breathing and meditation, these other techniques worked really well. But the challenge is, and the irony is, that the more stressed out you are, the harder those things are to do.
Of course.
Right? It's like when someone tells you to calm down when you're super stressed out, the last thing you want to do is calm down. You want to kill them for telling you to do that.
Don't tell me to calm down.
Don't you tell me to calm down. You calm down. Right, exactly. And the problem is that what's going on in your body is that you're having a fight or flight response. So, our bodies have, two major parts to the nervous system, right? There's a rest and digest part, the parasympathetic, that manages your sleep and your digestion and reproduction and creativity and all the stuff that you can do when you feel safe. And then the fight or flight response, the sympathetic response, is there to get you out of danger when the bear shows up. Right. But the problem is that the way we live right now, we interpret our computers and our email and our text messages and the traffic and light pollution and noise and all these things as little mini lions all over the place. And what ends up happening is that makes us stressed out. And when we feel stressed out, even if we're not somebody who says, oh, I have anxiety, it might manifest in all sorts of different ways. It manifests like having trouble focusing or feeling overwhelmed. You can't find your keys. Like you can't fall asleep at night. You wake up in the middle of the night for no reason. All of these things are manifestations of stress. And so what Dave was trying to do, my co-founder, Dr. David Rabin, was trying to do was find ways to help people, to empower them to have more control over how they feel, so they can be more empowered. They have less reliance on maybe habit-forming medications that they don't want to take. Maybe they don't need to drink as much caffeine, or they drink less alcohol. And he was looking at all these different modalities. He was looking at sound therapy, meditation, deep breathing, biofeedback. And when he realized his touch is completely overlooked, and so how Apollo works is the same way, if you think about it, that a hug works. So if you feel stressed and someone hugs you, your body naturally regulates itself. Your heart rate comes down, your blood pressure comes down, you stop sweating, your mind clears, and you have a moment of pause where you can think and be focused and be clear. And that's because your body's not telling you to run away from the danger because it knows it's safe. And Apollo essentially works through your sense of touch to help you feel safe. And so you can use this tool whenever you want it to help focus or sleep or recover. And it was originally developed and tested at the University of Pittsburgh. And we saw that when you measure someone's biometrics, when you measure their heart rate or their heart rate variability or their blood pressure, it actually improves within a couple minutes when you use this device, just like it would if you were meditating, deep breathing, just walked out of yoga, or just had a nice hug from someone you like.
Wow. Okay, so several questions here. One, when can I get one?
You can get one now. You can just go to apolloneuro.com and order one now.
Two, how do you even begin to build a wearable? Like, I mean, there's the Fitbit, there's the Apple Watch, there's every single day. I mean, I happen to wear an Apple Watch, but you know, but how do you even begin to, like, okay, even though there's all these other things out there, we want to build one that's truly based on touch and is sort of that safe space for people.
Sure. So the decision, so Apollo vibrates, lots of things vibrate. So we thought about lots of different things that we could do. We thought about beds and chairs and other tools we could build that vibrate that are not wearable. But what we realized when we were talking to people from the very beginning. And that was my major part of my role in the very beginning when it was a research project at the university was, Dave asked me when the university approached him about innovation competitions and raising, money for his studies, if I could help, because I had a lot of experience from my past jobs, helping startups with, pitch decks and business plans and, explaining, a difficult concept to a lay audience. And so I joined the team, and we spent a lot of time, which doesn't always happen when you're doing like a technical scientific development, talking to potential customers, right? So we took this out of the lab real quick and started testing it with real people. Okay, what do you want to see? What we realized is that a wearable would be very helpful for people because they can use it whenever they want to, right? So the wearable can be used when you're sleeping, but it can also be used when you're in the middle of a business meeting that's rough at work, right? Or when you have to go give a presentation, or when you're on the plane and you need to, fall asleep on the plane or wake up where you're going and adjust to a time zone, or you're driving your kids to school and they're screaming in the back and there's traffic and you have a rough morning.
You're like,
literally, you would need a moment, you have an Apollo, right? And it can be used when you meditate or when you do yoga or any of those things. But if you can't do those things at that time, it gives you the benefit in moments when you don't have the opportunity to do those things. And so that's how we decided to make it a wearable. And the other key difference is that other wearables on the market, like you're talking about your Apple Watch or your Fitbit or any of these other things, are measurement devices, right? So they measure you and they tell you something about your body, and then you use that information to maybe change your behavior, right? Like, oh, my sleep's crap. Oh, I better go to bed earlier. Right? That's something you might do. Or I don't move. Clearly, I should move more. But Apollo doesn't work that way. Apollo is a therapeutic device. So instead of telling you a bunch of data about yourself, it actually just helps. It just helps. So basically, you turn it on and you feel better. And that's the purpose for us, was to give somebody a tool that they can use whenever they need it, that actually just helps them feel better.
Awesome. And so is there, like, do you sort of say, okay, I'm feeling stressed, so now I turn on the Apollo? Is that sort of how it works? Or is it reading something with your heart rate so that it enables them to sort of know this is the time for you to, like, get that hug? Metaphysical.
So right now, the way it works is that you can basically pick a program, kind of like you would select a playlist, right, for music, and you just pick a program and it starts, and within a couple minutes, you start to notice the effect. So, right now it's like, I know that I have to work on spreadsheets today. I hate spreadsheets, or my taxes, right? I'm going to put on clear and focused. and I'm going to feel calm and energetic and able to get through my work efficiently without being distracted so that I can go about my day to something better and get my work done faster. Or I know that I have to go to network and maybe I don't like networking, right? Or maybe I'm tired and the last thing I want to do is now network, right? And so rather than, drinking coffee, which then makes you talk too fast or makes you jittery, or drinking wine, which works for a little bit, but then makes you sleepy anyway, you can use the Apollo on social mode and feel a little bit more energetic and relaxed and at ease so that you can go on about socializing. Same thing with sleep. Like I know, let's say I'm going to have, I have to wake up early. I want to fall asleep quickly. I don't want to lay in bed with my eyes open, or I wake up in the middle of the night and I want to go back to bed. Just turn it on. And the other cool part of it is it has the app. It also has 2 buttons on the device. So if you press both buttons at the same time, it will turn a program that you like back on. So you can turn it on and off and change the intensity on the device itself. So in the middle of the night, you're not looking at your screen.
Right. Awesome. Okay. So this is something we're going to get. So what's been the response so far since you guys have launched?
I mean, so we've done a lot of testing, right? So before Apollo hit the market, it's been in development for 5 years. We did several clinical trials at universities, and then from there tested on over 2,000 people. So all of that basically taught us which programs, how do they work, when will people use them, what intensities, exactly how people wanted their experience to be. And so far, I mean, you can check the reviews on the website. I mean, people are really getting benefit from it, which is really thrilling for me, because you always have your data and know what your general responses are, but you only know when you put it out in the real world to see what happens. And I'm really excited. What's also really interesting is the range of people who are using it. So it's like, people are using it for their kids to help them with schoolwork and focus and sleep. And then you can see that, elite athletes are using this for recovery, right? So they can, and then you see like, older people and moms and entrepreneurs and CEOs, literally like anybody can use this thing. And so that's been really interesting, just seeing the breadth of the market and the breadth of the kinds of people that get benefit from it. And when you think about it, all of us experience stress. All people like hugs in general.
Oh,
so,
awesome.
So that's been really interesting to see the response.
Fantastic. This sounds like such an awesome product I want for myself, just because. And why did you guys pick the ankle as the other location that you could wear it?
So that was interesting. So the wrist we tested it in the lab in all sorts of locations when we were first developing it. So we found that the wrist, the chest, all sorts of places it worked. And when you think about, if you've ever stood in front of a subwoofer, like with bassy music, and you feel it in your body, it transmits through dense bone, right? It transmits through bone. So the wrist is great, but we actually found out that the ankle worked because we had, Dave is a psychiatrist, and he was working with his patients, and he often sits with his legs crossed where one foot is on top of the knee. And he was resting his wrist against his ankle and goes, wow, this feels good. And then he's like, that's interesting. It feels really good on the ankle. And then we had actually a person with Parkinson's who tested it. And when we moved it down, and this is just N of 1, just one case study, when we put it on his ankle, his tremor really subsided. And we were like, that's really interesting. And so we ended up making a few, maybe like 10 prototypes on the ankle simply for those kinds of tests. And then what we realized, we started putting them out in the wild in our beta test for about 2,000 people. And we realized that there was really like 2 camps. There was team wrist and team ankle. So we were like, well, let's let the people decide. And I'll switch back and forth. I'll wear it on my wrist during the day a lot because it makes it easier for me to change modes and turn it on and off. But I wear it on the ankle a lot for sleep because it's not in my way when I'm sleeping.
Interesting. So cool. So I'm sure there's been tons and tons of challenges along the way to making this come to fruition and physically something that people can actually buy and use and get the benefit of. Can you talk about a challenge that you've had along the way and how you've been able to get through it?
Oh man, there's
You have 2 hours, Laura? I know.
I mean, in terms of challenges, I mean, being a first-time female CEO of a neuroscience company when you're just starting out that uses vibration to help people calm down and is scientifically validated was an interesting sell in the very beginning. It's like getting, people are like, it's going to do what? And I completely understand because, I'm, a New Yorker. I grew up in upstate New York, but nonetheless, East Coaster, kind of skeptical, definitely not, wouldn't say that I was very open to the woo woo. And so, Dave told me what he was working on in the lab, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. And he's like, okay, do you think this project's, viable to get funding for the studies? I said, oh, sure. I can help with that. And then we raised money for his clinical trials. But it was until the clinical results came back that I truly believed. When I saw, because I knew it made me feel better, but, there's placebo, there's my own bias that I want it to work. But when I saw the data come back from the trials, I was like, oh, this thing really works. Like, you did a double blind trial and you're hitting these kinds of results. That's incredible.
Not fake
And so the challenge was really getting started. And for me as a, first time CEO, I didn't have a network, right? Like some people start and they're, former Apple or Google, or they're super connected in the Valley, but we're from Pittsburgh. Well, I mean, the company's based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which doesn't have the same kind of network that Silicon Valley has. And so for me, it was establishing my network. And that's just a lot of hustle. You just got to hustle.
Yes. No, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, especially being a female founder, it's so much harder to do anything. Like, what was it like when you finally got an investor to be like, okay, we get this?
Oh, I mean, the first people that hopped on board were doctors and neuroscientists and neurologists and people who understood the science of what we were doing. So in the very beginning, before we had a product, before we had customers, before we had customer reviews you could see on a website, what we had was science, right? We had data from a study. And so I was like, who cares about, who's going to understand the importance of what I'm doing? And I think, regardless of what we're talking about, right? Regardless of whether we're talking about some scientific product or talking about a hair care product or talking about anything, if you got to figure out one key thing, it's who cares about what you're doing? What does a customer care about? What does an investor care about? And you need to go find your people, right? Whoever cares about what you're doing. And so for me, in the beginning, I knew we had strong science and that we had scientific basis to say that we could really help people. So I went to find the people who cared about that. And those were the people that initially backed me. And then it snowballed from there, because when the people who are subject matter experts in what you're doing get what you're doing and get behind you, then everyone else takes notice.
Because they know it's for real. I think it's oftentimes where it's like, there's all this hype behind the stuff and all the bells and whistles aren't really leading to anywhere. But when you come in with like, listen, I know that like the founders are going to make good sense. You can't go wrong. It's like, it's going to be ideal. So that's tremendous. And so where are you guys going now? So you've launched, people are buying these. What happens now?
So, I mean, we are just spreading the word, right? We're spreading the word about what we're doing, and we're starting to gather data about, from customer feedback about how are people using this, what are they using it for, and who's getting the most benefit from it. But you'll see us all around. Hopefully South by Southwest happens. We're up for an innovation award at South by Southwest, so we should be there next week as long as it doesn't get canceled. We'll see. Hope everyone stays healthy.
Like you and me both, because it's like I have clients out. We have a huge event to do on Saturday, so I'm like, can we not?
Right, exactly. So,
you don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, so we'll be at South by Southwest. We'll be at a bunch of events moving forward. We'll be at Upgrade Labs, which is a conference in Beverly Hills, and you'll see us around. We're making moves.
Dope. So, what would you tell 21-year-old Kathryn, knowing what you know now?
I would tell her that her instincts are good, and that if people seem to be, people tend to be negative or threatened by somebody with big ideas and a lot of energy, not to take it personally, because it's not really about you, it's about them. And just keep on keeping on.
So very true. I feel it's like listen, it's my idea. We got this. Like, just keep.
Yeah, and I think it's true for a lot of, I was listening to somebody I know was being interviewed and basically being offered a position, not at my company, at another one. And I just happened to overhear the conversation, and I heard her basically talk herself out of a job. She's like, I know that you've selected me, but I just want you to know that I've never done this before. And, are you sure that there isn't someone, more appropriate for this job, when she's being offered the job? And the thing that I notice about women is we always want to manage expectations. We always want to say, this is what I can bring to the table so that we're fair and equitable and upfront. And, the guys don't do that. They do not do that. And so what I want people to know is that, you can do it, and believing that you can do it and finding people who support you is really, really important. We tend to believe that we tend to be more cautious about what we claim, about what we can do. And it reads, she was just being honest. But the frank part was none of them in that room had ever done it before. She was, of course they didn't. It was a new thing.
Well, look, no one knew how to build a computer before they built one.
Right.
No one knew how to build a neuroscience-based wearable that will help you calm the hell down until you built it, but you built it. So like, it's not, unfortunately, it's a crazy part about, especially when you're female founders and you hear, and women especially, like, we always want to try and be in the real world as opposed to like, project the possibility. And men don't have that issue. They're like, yeah, well, of course I can do this. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I've got this.
Figure it out.
And so the thing is that, in my experience, the women have got it too. Sometimes they've thought it through more thoroughly, in fact. And so, I think one thing that is important for anybody, no matter what you're doing, is to find the people who support you, figure out what you don't know, right? Figure out what you don't know and figure out who the people are who know what you need to know, and start talking to them and build your network and get the support. And don't worry that you don't have everything figured out. You don't have every detail lined up. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing's perfect. You just have to understand what your goals are, what your resources are, and who you need in order to help build whatever it is that you're trying to build, and just keep on moving.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I want to shout this from the rooftops, because it's just a thing that I see over and over and over again. And I'm like, y'all just gotta go do it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like,
what's the worst that's gonna happen? You fail? Almost everybody fails. It happens, right? And then what do? You learn from it and you keep on going.
Yeah, I know one of the best things advice a friend of mine said, like, and anything that you do, you either win or you learn. So you never actually lose, because even if you don't get it this particular time, you figure out, oh, those are things that I know that next time I won't do, or those are things I'll be mindful of the next time something runs or comes around, so that I'm prepared and will know how to, like, kick butt and take names this time. Like, that's the whole part of this. And the rush to get everything done by a certain date or a certain age, everyone needs us to stop, because you'll be fine. Just take your time, figure it out, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It is the key. So you obviously are super duper busy. There's probably tons of things and people you have to like take care of and make sure everything is warm and fuzzy. How do you take care of yourself? Like, what is your self-care routine?
So my self-care routine is a pretty long list of things that I do to take care of myself. So what I would say is that before I started this company, I've got a pretty gritty work ethic, and I still do. But one of the things that became apparent to me as I learned about the nervous system and how we respond to stress, and basically the really negative consequences that having chronic stress can really cause, right? Both with irritability and mood and productivity, but also like sleep and long-term health consequences that I wasn't really aware of. If you asked me 5 years ago, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? That was my attitude. I'm like, no, I'll keep on going, I'll be fine. And then you get run down, and then why are you getting colds all the time, right? Why do you feel poorly? And then what I realized is that, I'm no good to anybody if I don't take care of myself, right? If I'm not putting in as much, at least a chunk of time reserved to make sure my sleep's good, my diet's good, I'm exercising. And if I don't do those things, then I'm not going to be at 100%. And then I can't lead at 100%. So for me, self-care is, I eat a very healthy diet. I find that I only eat foods that I feel good at basically after I've eaten it, I feel better. If I feel worse after I've eaten something, I don't eat that anymore. Like it's
Good
just
move.
rule of thumb. It doesn't matter what it is. You know what I mean? Sometimes, it doesn't matter if it's not any particular diet. It's just generally like protein, vegetables, whatever your mom would probably put on the plate. I just try to stick to a fairly healthy diet. I get up pretty early in the morning. Not everybody does. One thing I find is that if I get outside, even if it's cloudy, even if it's not that nice, if I get outside for a little bit in the morning, I feel more awake throughout the day. And have you noticed the animals are always chirping and out and about in the morning, and then they're also out and about at night? Because that helps balance your circadian rhythm. So being around for sunset and sunrise actually helps you sleep better. I keep a consistent bedtime. So I find that, maybe I'm like an old grandma and I always go to bed at the same time, but it actually helps me just basically wake up. And when I wake up, I have energy, right? I'm not tired. I'm not dragging. And then I exercise. And it doesn't have to be like crazy exercise, but you just make sure that you move, because, movement is really important for sleep. It's one of the best things for sleep, and it also just boosts your mood. So you don't have to be like doing you don't have to be doing like some crazy CrossFit program, but just general movement is really important. Nothing against CrossFit, but I'm just saying you don't have to be a super intense athlete, but getting some movement is really important for me to make sure that, I'm just feeling good.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I remember, like Facebook memories is evil because like it'll come up with things that you now are like, how could I have said that on Facebook? And one of the things was like, relentless hustle. I'll sleep when I'm 70, and it was like 7 years ago, and it's just when I was starting my business. And the idea of me thinking now that like I won't sleep or like I will just keep going until sleep when I'm 70 is like abhorrent to me now. But I'm like, no, I'm getting my sleep. I have to. Like, I think there's been a big shift in like the last 3 to 4 years of, especially of entrepreneurship, realizing the importance of taking care of yourself in ways that matter. So exercising, sleeping better, and eating better are the real keys to actually becoming a successful entrepreneur. Because if you don't do those things, you won't be able to function.
No, you won't, and you'll get sick. You'll get sick either in the short term or the long term. You'll get sick. It's like a car, right? You can't just drive your car across the country and back over and over without putting any oil in it. Like you can't, it will die and you'll be on the side of the road, right? And so you just got to think about the car needs regular maintenance. So do you. And it's also for a lot of women, I think we're always doing for others, right? Whether it's you're leading a company and you're making sure your team has everything that they need and they're ready to go and they're feeling good, or your family or your friends. A lot of women are they see themselves as caretakers and responsible. And as a result, we tend to put ourselves at the bottom of the to-do list.
Yes.
And when that happens, eventually it will take its toll. And I think one of the major things to think about is that it is not selfish to take care of yourself. It is important. It's just as important as taking care of somebody else. Because if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be there to take care of somebody else.
Perfect. What a wonderful way to end the show. You're fantastic. Kathryn, it's been such a delight having a chat with you. We're going to put all the information for folks to find out about Apollo Neuro so that you can get one. I'm going to order one very soon because this sounds like a fantastic product. And your founder story is phenomenal. So thank you so very much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. And that is our show.